Welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we're going to be changing the transmission fluid on the 2006 Saab 9-3. In terms of parts, to get started with here's the parts that we're going to need. First, we're going to need transmission fluid, and the key on the transmission fluid is it needs to be 3309 is the Saab spec. So this AMSOIL ATF Signature Series is marked as Saab 3309 compatible. That's important. That's the specific spec for this car. And then as far as parts, there's two other things I'm going to replace, and this is going to be the drain plug and the drain plug gasket. And so the drain plug here, it's a GM part. Here's the part number on the screen. I'll put this below. This is made in Japan. And then there's also the crushable gasket that goes with it. This is an aluminum gasket. Since this is not a service that's done on a regular basis, I thought, you know what, I should probably just replace this as well and have this on hand, because I thought in the event something happened to the old one, it'd be good to have an extra one on hand because I can't run down to my local parts store and get this. So I ordered that, a couple bucks, no big deal. Just like on the transmission fluid, I ordered an extra quarter or two of that because I can't run down to my local store and actually get more of this special transmission fluid. So now we're going to talk about the tools, and then we're going to go over to the car. The tools we're going to need are going to be as follows. To start, we're going to need a 1/2-inch ratchet and a 24mm socket. I'd prefer this to be 6-point, but all I've got is a 12-point. Although I do have a 6-point impact I could have used, but we'll just use this, that'll be fine. We're going to need that to remove the drain bolt and to reinstall it. And for reinstall, we're going to need a torque wrench, able to go to 33 foot-pounds. And so that's going to be for reinstalling the bolt. We're obviously going to need a catch pan for catching the transmission fluid. Since we're dealing with fluid, we're going to need safety glasses. We also may want some gloves for our hands to protect them with. And then now up top, for being able to remove our dipstick and our fill hole, we're going to need this is a flexible claw grabber tool. We're going to use this to help pull the dipstick out because I can't really reach my hands down there. Maybe if you've got really small snake-like arms, you can do it better than I can. But this is going to be my method for doing it. The next thing we're going to need is a 24-inch long 3/8 extension. We're going to need this to reach down to actually remove the bolt that holds in our fill plug, which is also our dipstick. Then at the top end of that, we're going to need a 3/8 ratchet. And then at the business end of the extension, we're going to need a 12mm socket. And then the secret sauce there is also going to be to add a magnetic adapter, because there's a bolt we're going to have to remove. And if you don't have this, you will lose the bolt. There's no guarantees where it'll go, and you'll spend more time than you should getting out. So make sure you get a magnetic adapter. And then you also may want a wobble extension to be able to help get your bolt out squarely and the socket on squarely. And this would simply go with the 3/8 wobble to the 3/8 magnetic adapter to our 12mm socket like this for what's going to go on the end of our 24-inch extension. And then we're going to need, and now this is going to be a little sleight of hand, we're going to need some zip ties, some 1/2-inch tubing, 3/8 inside diameter. We're going to need only about 2 feet of that, give or take. And then we're also going to have and I don't have it here, but you'll see it a little bit later in the video, a screw-on adapter for my transmission fluid that fits into this tubing. Alternatively, if you've got a long funnel with at least a 24-inch long reach, you may be able to get away with that. I don't have one of those, so you're going to see my improvised method for doing that later in the video. So now let's go over to the car and get started. To start this, we're going to have to remove the fill plug on top of the car. To do that, we're going to use a 24-inch extension with a 12mm socket on the end. But the secret weapon or secret magic here is to have a magnetic adapter to be able to actually successfully remove the bolt, because you're going to see it's going to come up through the engine compartment. And so that extra bit of magnetic attraction is going to be your secret tool to actually get that bolt out and to not lose the bolt under the car. That's going to save you a lot of time. And the other bit for removing the dipstick part is going to be able to have a grabber tool. This is also about 24 inches long. This is one of the ones you just push at the end, and then it has this little grip here. This is how we're going to pull the dipstick out, because where Saab put the dipstick is very bizarre and hard to remove, and the fill bolt and the dipstick are the one and the same for location. So we've got to get to that, and we're going to do that from the top side of the car. It's a little precarious to work its way through, and that's why we've got to have these long tools. So then to start, we're looking for a green dipstick plug that has a bolt right next to it, and we're going to fish our extension down to be able to get to until it locks on there. And now I can see I've got it just finger tight here on there. I'm going to attach the ratchet to be able to break that loose. And then I'm going to remove the ratchet after I got it broken loose, where I can then just twist it out with my hands. And so once I think I've got it out, I should be able to lift it out. And then just like this, the bolt came out on the magnetic end, and that is a success for removing the bolt. We'll set this aside in our parts tray. And then the next step is going to be to remove the dipstick. So I'm going to use my claw grabber. You can have the claw open, and I'll be able to fit this claw right around the dipstick head. There we go. Once we finally get it locked on, then we can pull up the dipstick, and then it'll come up like this. You can see there's our green dipstick. And now we'll set this aside. Okay, to find the drain plug here, we're going to go under the car on the driver's side. And then if you hopefully can see, if I get the light correct, and then if we go straight back, and then right here is a 24mm bolt on my car, and that's going to be our transmission drain plug that I'm going to use. I'm going to have to remove. Obviously I've got my catch pan underneath to be able to catch the fluid coming out, and so that's going to be for our drain part here that we're going to have to do. That's what we're going to start with. So now referring to my reference manual, the torque on the transmission fill bolt is going to be 45 Newton meters or 33 foot-pounds. So we'll get out the torque wrench and put in our new transmission bolt at the bottom along with the gasket. Then we're going to set it to 33 foot-pounds with the torque wrench. Now that most of the transmission fluid is out, I'm going to put in the new bolt and start it by hand. Obviously I still got the drip pan underneath there. Make sure you don't cross thread anything by doing it by hand to start before I put on the wrench. Remember we went at 33 foot-pounds, so I've got my torque wrench set. There we go, we got the click on the torque wrench there. And now with the bolt properly torqued and back in, we can go back to the top of the car and start the the fill process, and we'll move the drain pan out from under the car. So now to actually get the new transmission fluid down to the dipstick that we removed earlier, because that's going to be our fill port, what I've done here is I've taken my 24-inch extension, then I've zip tied this piece of tubing. I'm going to put a small funnel at the top. I left a little bit of room down here. Then this is going to go down into the fill plug hole where the dipstick came out. By having this zip tied to the 24-inch extension gives me the rigidity to guide this down into the right place to get this seated into the transmission fill. So now we're going to go back over to the car and put this in. This is a little bit of a contrived contraption here. If you've got a long funnel with at least a 24-inch long neck, you'll be fine. But I don't have that, so I'm having to improvise here a little bit, and we're going to do it like this. Then now at the top of my tube, what I'm going to use is I got this flexible pour spout that AMSOIL makes, or at least maybe not makes, but at least sells. That's a perfect fit for their bottles, and they've got this little dispenser end that I've cut down so I can just put this straight into the top of the tube. This will screw onto the top of the bottle so I can just pour it right in, and there will be zero mess with how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to take my first quart, which is 946 milliliters. We're going to need probably about 3 liters, so it's going to be about 4 quarts, because each of these is going to be short by about 50 milliliters, 54 milliliters if you want to be specific, of an actual liter. So there's what we've got for our apparatus. And now to begin, I got my tube down, so I'm just going to take this end Put this in like this. And then just fill. It's going to be a little bit of patience, and this will go right into my transmission. And there we have 1 quart, and we'll just repeat until we're full. Okay, so after putting in my 3rd quart, I put it in the dipstick back in just to double check where it is. See, it's perfect on the cold mark, which is right there. That says cold, so I'm good. So one of the things, because it would require more theoretically, but that limit is also due to the transmission cooler lines. But since I didn't disconnect those and replace the seals and everything else with that, which I think is maybe a little bit overkill, since there's no problem with those seals, I'm not going to do that. That there's going to be an extra residual amount of transmission fluid that's still left in that. I know that still has some contaminants in it, but replacing a preponderance of it is right. And so it looks like we're good here. We'll have to warm the engine up later and then double check this again. But for now, it looks like we're good to put this back in and then tighten it down and button the car up for now. I'm going to be using this wobble adapter here to put the bolt back in. You see, that gives me just a little bit of extra there to deal with the reach around and get everything in square. So now with my dipstick back in, as you can see with my tool here, I got that back down and seated and squared up. It's hard to see, so I'm going to put that on camera here, and now I'm going to take my 24-inch extension, and now we're going to feed this down and in. Now I'm going to leave this actually attached, but it's also going to be very important that we try to get this as straight as possible so it can properly seat into the transmission. You can also check this from the bottom to make sure everything is snug and seated. You don't want to over tighten the bolt. I'm not sure I've got an actual bolt torque spec on that. We want to make sure that the dipstick gets all the way in. Because of the gasket, that rubber O-ring that's on it, make sure it gets all the way seated so nothing spills or leaks out. That's very important. You can also stick your hand in it under the car here and make sure it pops right down after you've got the grabber hook on it. You can see I got the grabber hook claws on it right now still. And the socket extension on the bolt. So I'm good to go. It's all tightened up. And so now with the proper fluid, everything all buttoned up, we should be good to go. Give it a test drive. And that's it for changing your transmission fluid. Hope you found this video useful and interesting. Click that like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you back here for another video. Have a great day. Bye.